Donald Trump is traveling to Detroit, Michigan this morning in an effort to reach out to the black community.
That's right. The Republican nominee plans to address a congregation at Great Faith Ministries Church later today. So what do the voters want to hear?
Well, Wayne Bradley is the Michigan State Director of African American Engagement for the Republican National Committee, and he joins us now. Wayne, thanks for coming on this morning. So what would you like, and what would the parishioners in this church in Detroit like to hear Donald Trump say?
I think most of the people here are just interested to hear his platform, to see if he understands, truly understands what the people of Detroit and what urban America needs in terms of the issues that affect our communities. I think this is an important first step in having that dialogue.
Now, did you see any issue with the report that came out that Donald Trump had, worked with the priest and had figured out exactly what he was going to say, or at least sort of scripted some answers and with the questions that were going to be asked? Did that bother you at all? I know it's been scrutinized a bit.
No, I think that's just maybe that's part of the interview, and so I'm sure there were some topics that they wanted to make sure they talked about. But overall, I think that the pastor has some issues, and he wants to cover them all. And I think that it's fair to kind of let Donald Trump know some of the things that they'll be talking about.
So polls suggest that Trump does not have a deep reservoir of support among black voters, to put it mildly. What could he say this morning that would allow people to hear him?
I think he needs to talk specifically about some of the issues in terms of education, in terms of how that would improve our communities, in terms of jobs. When you start talking about trade agreements, Detroit is one of the places that's been affected the most by some of the bad deals that have happened in the manufacturing industry. So I think that's a strong point. That's something Donald Trump has talked about from day one. So I think he needs to talk about that. But again, I would focus on school choice, jobs, and then when you start talking about making communities safe, make sure you talk about also making sure the police are also accountable, talk about body cameras, talk about all the different issues that affect our community.
And Donald Trump has been beating the drum that Democratic policies have failed African Americans in some communities in that state. Does that resonate with your community, do you feel like, or not?
It's quite simply, it's true, and I'm glad that we have a candidate that's at least bringing that issue to the forefront. I think at the end of the day that people do have to make their own decisions on what they're comfortable with, but it's a great discussion to have because Detroit is one of the poster childs for liberal policies, and the Democrats have run the city for a long time. So it's a worthy discussion, and I think a lot of people have a serious trust deficit with Hillary Clinton. Yeah. And that's a bigger issue, is if you don't trust Hillary Clinton, let's talk about why you should support Donald Trump.
So if I live in Detroit and I look around and there's a lot of poverty and not many jobs, and I hear policymakers in D.C., Democrats and Republicans, say, we need to do, let's move a lot of immigrants into Detroit, and they'll make the city nicer. They'll replace the population there with people who are vigorous and hardworking and impressive. That would bother me. Does that bother anyone in Detroit?
I think it does when you start talking about some of the investments they're talking about putting into some of these neighborhoods where people live there now that would love to see some of that reinvestment put in there right now. And why would we have to wait for immigrants to come here to actually invest in these cities?
Exactly. That's a great point. Wayne, thanks a lot for coming on this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.